to enroll.
We are back, and now at 45 minutes after the hour, all we have to refer to as far as a medical statement from the White House is a tweet from the president using a rather vague phrase that he and the First Lady have entered the quarantine process. Usually the word quarantine is taken quite literally. It takes you out of circulation. Industry standard these days has been for a period of on or about 14 days. We don't have anything more to tell you. There is a perfectly good White House physician's office that is also capable of putting out a more detailed health statement for the president. All we know is he was tested, we think, in the 9 p.m. Eastern hour. There is every likelihood it was the first of multiples given the chance for false positives and negatives. So it's a lot to talk about. Let's bring in two of our other guests for this evening who've been very patient with us. Jason Johnson's with us. He's a campaign veteran. He's a contributor to the Griot, and he's a professor of politics at Morgan State University. Tim Miller also returns to the broadcast. He's a contributor to the Bulwark, the former communications director for Jeb Bush, former top advisor to the anti-Trump PAC Our Principles, and having just hung out with the cool kids like Bill Maher in L.A., he's ready to come back and join those of us who are members of the AV Club in cable. So, Tim, I'm going to begin with you. Your reaction to where this leaves us politically. This has been your life's work, is explaining the actions and words of politicians. Where does this leave us tonight?
Well, glad to hear you were watching HBO last weekend, Brian. Look, my old boss, Jeb Bush, said that this would be the chaos president. And I just jotted down some quick notes here while I was waiting on what's going on right now. He's embroiled in a scandal over the fact that he cannot condemn white supremacy. That consumed his day today after the debate. His daughter-in-law is, according to the New Yorker, settled a serial sexual harassment suit from her time at Fox. His top staffer has the coronavirus, and you've been showing pictures of her walking around the White House grounds, not wearing a mask. This whole White House has not taken this pandemic that's cost 200,000 deaths seriously, and that now has come inside the House. His wife was taped talking about how she didn't care about the kids being separated at the border, and she didn't care about the Christmas setup she had to do at the White House. His campaign manager from 2020 is telling friends that he was under investigation and that he's despondent. I mean, Brian, this is you couldn't even have predicted this kind of chaos, this level of chaos for the chaos presidency, and it's almost all brought on by their own incompetence, by their own indifference.
Right. And yet, Jason, I'm old enough to remember this afternoon when the lead story was the president's inability and his press secretary's inability to, using clear language, denounce hate groups within our midst.
Yeah, Brian. I mean, it's interesting. We talk about October surprises, right? This is going to be like a nesting doll, Russian nesting doll of surprises. This has been, we've said this so many times over the last 4 years. This might be the worst 24 hours in the Trump presidency. He's not only, because I think it's important to mention, it's not just that he wouldn't condemn white nationalists, but if you ask the white nationalists themselves, including the Patriot Prayer groups and the Proud Boys, he actually told them to stand by and be ready at his beck and call. So we have a president who's called for terrorists, a president who has mocked the coronavirus and its impact, a president who lied about it just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about it, and a president who now is in what we know to be the quarantine process. Brian, I can tell you, I've always said that I don't think there's many undecided voters left. I think most people know what they're going to do. They're either going to vote or not vote. But I think the chaos surrounding this presidency right now, the utter irony of a president who mocked mask wearing 48 hours ago, possibly now having to go through the painful process that millions of Americans have gone through. Hopefully he survives, clearly, he and his wife and everyone around. But if he has to go through the coronavirus process, this is almost a nail in the coffin of his incompetence in handling the virus. And if that's the most important issue to voters, and it seems to be right now, this could be the death knell of a functional campaign by Donald Trump going forward. This is a terrible day for Republicans across the board.
Hey, Tim, I'm reminded again earlier today in recorded remarks for the annual, the semi-regular Al Smith dinner in New York, coronavirus has made for the exception. The president said that the end of the pandemic is in sight. As they say in Washington, he might want to revise and extend his remarks.
I mean, how many times has he said this, Brian? This is wish casting. Look, in one of my hats at Republican Voters Against Trump, we've had a couple of people from inside the White House come out and tape ads we've been putting up talking about what their experience is, Elizabeth Newman and Olivia Troy. And what they've said is that internally this was the policy, to pretend like this wasn't a big deal because they didn't want it to hurt the president's reelection campaign. So it wasn't just that the president was spreading disinformation. He was preventing the people who are public servants whose job it was to try to protect us from doing their job. And so this is it. We were going to open up at Easter. The thing was going to go away when it was hot. And how we can go through all of the lists. He's going to say this all the way up till Election Day. And now, they've been so irresponsible and so obsessed with this perception that everything is fine that they're all walking around the White House with somebody that has the virus and nobody's wearing masks, nobody's distancing. And it's insane.
We're just learning that a former colleague of ours, Vivian Salama, is apparently reporting that the Biden campaign has asked a journalist, a pool reporter covering politics who was covering the Trump outing on Wednesday, not to travel in their pool with the former vice president. And Jason, I know this has turned us all into kind of amateur physicians. We now track the ins and outs of medicine, as we all must do as consumers, as citizens in a pandemic. But imagine the job of contact tracing that I guess the CDC begins tonight.
I mean, look, this contract tracing the Trump campaign might be a scandal in and of itself. There's probably tons of people who they're with that they don't want the public to know about. I mean, this could be such a damaging series of investigations. This is like discovery in a court case, because we don't have to just know that Hope Hicks has now shown symptoms. Who has Hope Hicks been speaking to? Where has she been speaking to people? How long was she with the president? Who else has the president's family been in contact with? All of these things, again, fly in stark contrast to an administration that has tried to pretend that this is not a problem and not something that we need to be concerned with. And here's where it gets really serious, Brian. If the president is now in the quarantine process, and we don't know what that means, we don't know how that's going to be said one way or another, what it could also mean is, will he stay off the campaign trail? This is where the rubber meets the road of how honest or dishonest is the Trump administration. If he is found to have the coronavirus, or Melania Trump has the coronavirus, like Boris Johnson in the UK or Bolsonaro in Brazil, will the president stop campaigning? Will he take the concerns of the public to be more important than his concern about being reelected? That's where the real rubber is going to meet the road. We may not know that anytime soon, because if he is positive, they're not going to want to tell the public.
Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for weighing in on this. Again, to think we were going to talk about voter suppression in Texas, a topic, by the way, that does not go away, is top of mind in that state and politically with the governor's decision, and we will stay on were it not for tonight's medical news. Jason Johnson, Tim Miller, you're both very nice to hang out for us and with your patience. For viewers just joining us, and we're going to crown over the top of the hour and